Right, good evening everybody. Welcome members, officers and any member of the public watching online, and welcome also to Councillor Mullaney from the Executive who's here with us tonight, as a number of the reports pertain to his responsibilities at that level. Apologies and substitutions. No apologies and no substitutions. Urgent business by reason of special circumstance. It was just to propose, under Chairman's privilege, whatever that may be, that we bring forward item 20 to after item 12 on the agenda. Is everybody happy with that? That will allow Mr. Brown to depart and go about his evening a little bit earlier than he otherwise would have. Is that okay with everyone? Yep. Fine. Right. Thank you. Item 4 then, declaration of interest. Oh, apologies, item 3. Thank you. Item 2, minutes. This isn't a good start for what's going to be a very long minute. You move the minutes. Thank you. Seconded. All those in favour? Right. Come on, Chris, gather it up. Okay. Urgent items we've done. Declarations of interest.
Yes, Chair. Item 9, just for transparency, want to declare that I'm a member of Burbage Parish Council.
Thank you, Paul. Any other declarations, Claire?
Similar to Councillor Williams, item 9, I'm a member of Markfield Parish Council, for open and transparency.
Thank you. Joyce?
Member of New Balverden Parish Council.
Richard?
And again, just for clarification and transparency, I'm Clerk of KB Parish Council.
Any others? Anne? And for my own purposes, I supported bid number 11, so I won't be taking part in any discussions relating to that one. That's on item 9. Okay. Right. Questions? I don't believe we have any questions, so that takes us on then to item 6, which is the Scrutiny Commission Work Programme. A very healthy agenda for tonight's meeting, which I think is one of the longest that we've had, so looking forward to making our way through that. And equally, we have a number of items lined up for our May meeting as well, so another busy agenda there. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the work programme from anybody? No? Excellent. Okay. Are we happy then to accept the work programme? Thank you. Right. That takes us on to item 7, forward plan, executive and council decisions. Lots of policies making their way through, which are all coming to scrutiny as well. So those are already interwoven into our programme. Any other questions or comments regarding the council's forward plan? No? Okay, thank you. So we're happy to accept that report. Yeah. That takes us on to the pesticides and grassland review. Caroline, would you care to take us through this, please?
Good evening, everyone. Apologies from Ian Pinfold if this is Ian's report and I'm presenting on his behalf, which I will do my best endeavours to represent Ian well. So as members will recall, the 2024 update of the climate change strategy included the addition of biodiversity. And within that strategy, there was an action to review pesticide use for weed control and also mowing regimes for our grasslands. So I shall quickly touch on the policies that Ian has written, which we are seeking your endorsement for tonight to go forward to executive for adoption. So each of the policies includes a statement, and they would include, as you would expect, for pesticides, a target to reduce our use of pesticides, to explore alternatives, which we hope to purchase a weed ripper for our new pedestrian sweeper, which should hopefully be able to reduce the pesticides that we use on hard standing, which is probably our biggest challenge in terms of weed control. Increased public awareness and engagement. As we all will be aware, there's a big movement nationally really to try and reduce pesticides, and has been for several years, and then obviously to monitor and review. For green spaces, Paul and I were just talking, I mean, we've both been here 21, 22 years now, and we have been on a journey throughout all of that time in terms of how we manage our parks. And Hollycroft Park and Argent's Mead have been pesticide-free for 15 years now, because we need that to obtain the Green Flag Award. Things like our annual bedding that comes in without pesticide use as well. So we have made significant inroads already. We don't have, the only figures that we have go back as far as 2018, which is on page 2 of the report, 3.4. And as you'll see, we've, over the last 3 years, we've sustained a 47% reduction on the totals that we were using in 2018. So we've already made a significant step forward. And then moving on to mowing. So again, it's a policy as you would expect, basically aimed at reducing the amount of short mown grass that we have, which I mean, we refer to it in our team as green deserts, because the biodiversity levels in those areas are so much lower than we have in a meadow or a longer grassland area. So you'll all have seen the work we've particularly done, say, Battling Brook Corridor over the last few years, letting the ground grow, and we've also had quite a lot of wildflower areas, housing, sheltered accommodation areas especially. They've had some quite positive feedback on the wildflowers in those areas. So the action plan is to continue to maintain our grassland in line with appropriate good practice, to explore alternatives. No more May, we've never tried. That might be something we want to do. And we also have sort of a rewilding initiative I've just mentioned, which is letting the grass grow. And again, more public engagement and awareness, which the signs that we did put on the letting the grass grow areas have been well received. 3.12 is monitoring and review, and proposes a performance indicator. So this is a quantitative baseline. So as you'll see, it totals the amounts of grass that we manage as meadow, which is about 48% currently, and the other 52% we manage as shorter grassland. Just to point out, the sports turf will be very, very difficult for us to rewild. It is a football pitch, and it has to be maintained as such. A cricket wicket wouldn't be any good if it had dandelions all over it, unfortunately. So it is really that 40 hectares of amenity grassland that we can hopefully make some more inroads in. We also need a qualitative performance indicator as well, and for example, the biodiversity net gain that we are going for to register those areas on Burbage Common includes significant areas of grassland there, and that work is to improve the quality of the biodiversity of those areas as well. So there's two strands to that work. I'm happy to take any questions, and I have Paul as my expert witness if I can't answer it in Ian's absence as well.
Are you ready, Paul? Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for that report. Just before we go on, can you just remind me the status of this report? Has it been to executive and been approved, or is it going to executive after us?
It's been to executive briefing, and it is to go back to executive
after we've considered it here. Okay, thank you.
So we're seeking your endorsement, really, of the work that
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions at all? Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just a couple of questions, mostly around the sort of pesticide use, I suppose. I'm aware that County Council tried to use sort of non-chemical based pesticides a few years back. They tended to be difficult to obtain, expensive, and actually not terribly efficient. So I remember getting emails saying, you've come and sprayed my weeds, it's wilted a bit in the first sign of rain, and it's back and growing again. So are we looking at any particular kinds of pesticides, or is it just a general reduction? How are we monitoring it? And is there potentially scope on the website for us to have a map where you can sort of type your postcode in and say, we're going to be treating this area in your vicinity, or it was last treated last May, and we're going to be treating it then? so people can actually go and find the information themselves as opposed to emailing us. Thank you.
In terms of types of pesticides, I think a pesticide is a pesticide. It's I think what we tried previously, we've had in for a day or two, is a hot foam or like a steam system, but that required one person on it the whole time, and we don't have the budgets for that level. The Borough Council, and grounds maintenance team specifically, we only maintain weeds on the land that is in Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council's ownership. We're not responsible for any weeds on the highway. They are a highway's function, but obviously we do put the road sweepers out to help, but we don't spray it on the highways. So principal areas of hard standing that we have, there's quite a bit within the sheltered schemes and on housing land or industrial estates, areas like that, and obviously the paths through the parks, cemetery, areas like that. So we will be doing what we can, Richard, is all I can promise. And I think we're hoping that signage and public engagement will lead to more tolerance of weeds. You know, we all have to make a decision, don't we? Bees, do we want bees? And they're essential for all of our lives. We know that, don't we? Or do we want invertebrates, which is such an important part of the food chain for our wildlife and our ecosystems, especially in urban areas? And if that's the case, we need to tolerate weeds a little bit more, and we're hoping that public engagement will support that. In terms of a map, I will have to take that away. It's probably quite a bit of work, if I'm honest. We can definitely probably put an article in the Council Tenants newsletter, which is probably a key area, and I can talk to Matt Burns about the industrial estates as well and whether we can do something there. But with the tenants, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, the communication around this is going to be absolutely key, because when people perceive that the council's just stopped maintaining things or isn't maintaining them so well, the counter message of the reason why has got to be really easily accessible. And you've done some great work around the food waste, and I think if we can follow some of the successes of that with a follow-up on this, it'll help just manage expectations, won't it?
I think it's signage. In the areas where we're going to take an approach, I think it's signage. There's a good example at Sheffield University where they've got this is a wildlife. We've changed our management, and we're now, we're reducing our pesticides, and it's a journey, isn't it? And
Any other questions at all from anybody regarding this? No?
can I make a comment?
Oh, Miriam?
As you know, I've recently lost my husband, and he had Parkinson's, and I'd like to make the comment that actually there's been a lot of work done that shows that some of the pesticides that have now been banned in the EU and here actually contribute to that disease. And it may be that still pesticides are contributing to diseases that we don't understand.
Thanks for that. Okay. Shall we move to the recommendations on this report then? The recommendations are that we note the current measures in place to reduce pesticides across our sites and service areas, and that officers regularly review all pesticides use on an annual basis to ensure progress to minimisation and eradication, ensuring compliance with best practice, and to introduce any practical pesticide-free techniques. Thank you. Richard, seconder? Joyce, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, that takes us on to item 9, the Parish and Community Initiatives Fund. Paul.
Thank you very much. Yes. So to report that this year we've had 12 applications for this year's Parish and Community Initiative Fund, requesting a total of £91,779. All of the 12 schemes have scored over 60 out of 100 against the scoring criteria. So it's the recommendation of the assessment panel that all of the projects are funded. And I've outlined in section 3.3 of the report, that outlines the outline of each of the projects and the funding amounts for each of the projects. in section 3.3. The other part of the report that I wanted to mention was about the community equipment grant, to report that this year we have funded a total of £24,934 towards 24 schemes, and those are all detailed in section 3.4 of the report. So really that's the key sort of parts of the report. So if there's any other questions on specific things, then I'll open that up to everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any questions at all around any of the proposals or the individual bids in this report? Paul?
Yes, thanks, Paul. Just one question. Obviously, all of the applications that you received actually passed the test and were approved, which is very good news. I just wondered, have you had any feedback from any of the parishes that they were finding it difficult to make an application?
Is this for the Parish and Community Initiative Fund or for the Community Equipment Grant?
No, it was the
parish.
I suppose it's for both, really,
yeah.
but
Yeah, sure.
I was thinking more of the initiative fund.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that I know that there are any.
No,
I was just asking the question.
Yeah.
It's something we have to be aware of.
I think over the years there's been sort of questions and people have struggled, but I think you know most of the applications this year have been good. Everyone seems to be grasping what's required from the applications, and most of the supporting documents are coming in with the applications. So, for instance, we'll ask for a number of quotes depending on the size of the scheme. So, all that seems to be coming in with the application forms, which is good. So, I think overall, yeah, I think you know people are grasping how the application works now, and we haven't really seen that many problems with it. Yeah, yeah.
Can I just add? We did introduce the community equipment grant. I think this is the second year.
This is the second year.
And we deliberately did that, and it is a much lighter touch. And I think, well, that is fully committed, apart from
£60.
£66,
Yeah.
Paul. That's terrible.
Yeah.
So, and I think that reflects what we've done probably to simplify it, and it's also. It's a much lighter touch in terms of the application process for the applicant.
Yeah, that's definitely helped a lot with the community equipment grant, because it means that we're not getting 40-odd applications, you know, for things like just a few £100 for a bench or a bin or something like that. That's all being dealt with through the community equipment grant, which is definitely streamlined things, as Caroline says, which has improved things a lot. Yeah.
Robin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to Paul and the team for their continued work and effort on this scheme. It's really important, I think, to lots of parishes and villagers, and they really appreciate it. So it's just a note of thanks, really. That's all.
Sure, we all endorse that. Thank you. Any other questions at all from members? No? Well, the recommendation is that we endorse the funding of the allocation of £91,779 for 12 schemes detailed as in section 3.3. Are we happy to endorse that recommendation? Yes? Yes. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 10, the Affordable Housing Programme, one of my favourites. Valerie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm kicking off the housing stuff tonight for you all. This is the annual report on affordable housing delivery in the borough. This year we've had 58 affordable homes completed, so that's for the period of 25 to 26. And there are a further 936 homes with planning permission that are either under construction or haven't been started yet. So this means if you tot up all of the delivery over the plan period years and the ones that are either waiting to start or under construction, we've delivered a total of 2,862 affordable homes, and the core strategy target for the plan period is 2,090. So performance actually comes out at about 137% rounded up against core strategy target. I wanted, as part of the report, to bring to councillors' attention that there have been a couple of key changes since last year. One of the main ones that's come forward is that there was a revision to the National Planning Policy Framework in December 2024. We've gone through a period where 25% of all affordable homes on site had to be for a product called First Homes. That's been removed from the new MPPF. It still remains as a product, but there's no compulsion that we have to provide that 25%. We've looked at the housing needs study, which is the evidence base that's going to afford the new local plan, and that does not support the delivery of first homes in the borough at all. And so what in effect has happened is that now when I'm negotiating on sites for affordable housing, I've gone back to what's the original core strategy position of 75% affordable homes for rent and 25% for shared ownership. The other thing that's happened, which we're not in a position yet to work out how it's going to pan out, but the new Social and Affordable Homes Grant Programme has been published. So the last period of Affordable Homes Grant ends at the end of March this year, and we've been given a 10-year settlement, 2026 to 2036. Bidding opened in February, but those registered providers who are strategic partners with Homes England and deliver a programme of development throughout the programme period have until, I think, mid-April to put in their bids to Homes England. So one of the main changes with it is that there is a focus back now on the rented properties being for social rent rather than affordable rent at 80% of open market values. So they're bringing back the social rent product with a vengeance. It also opens strategic partnerships, which most of the registered providers who are the key players in our borough are already part of. Local authorities now can bid to become a strategic partner, but they have to commit to delivering 800 new homes during the programme period over the next 10 years. So it's probably not something that at this moment we're geared up to take part in, but we are still a partner with Homes England, and we can bid under continuous market engagement for individual schemes. The slightly disappointing thing with the new programmes is that we did hope that there would be specific targets within that programme, firstly for delivery of homes in rural areas, and secondly that strategic partners ought to provide a proportion of Section 106 properties, which, as you know, has been the bane of my life for the last couple of years. There is no such undertaking, so we don't know as yet what's going to happen with Section 106 going forward. I think I would mention that the enabling and strategy and development officers within Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland meet on a quarterly basis, and I've undertaken on behalf of that group to go out to all our registered providers with a questionnaire to say, what are you going to be doing in the next 5 years, hopefully, if they can commit to that. Is the Section 106 in the business plan? Is there anything that are the numbers that you don't want to take, or the property types you don't want to take, just to try and get a feel of what under the new programme we can go forward with. But at the moment it is still a little bit unknown how we're going to go. The old Affordable Homes programme is coming to an end, but there are still schemes out there that are working under those rules and that funding programme. So that's really the main key points that I wanted to bring out, and I'm happy to take questions on anything else.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for that. Always an interesting report, and if you like, the community payback for the development, which sometimes is unpopular, but at least we get a proportion of affordability that can go back into rural communities where it happens. Richard, question?
Yes, two please, Chair, if I may. So first of all, thank you, Valerie, for the report, which is very interesting. So I think affordable housing for those who are most in need of it is one of the biggest challenges we've got as a council. So probably the first part is probably be useful for members if we got a breakdown of the type of that 1926, be sort of HMO, 1-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat, townhouse, etc. So we can see what kind of housing is going into that affordable mix, if you like. Then the second point, which might come of being on planning, I'm just a bit wary about including the 444 and the 492 in the delivered type thing, if you like. We've been bitten too many times by developers coming back saying, oh, it's not viable, and we lose a big chunk of affordable housing because they can't do it. So quite happy that we've got 1984 sort of to date. The ones, oh, that was the other part of the question. So where building permission, or where they have planning permission and building is underway, is that building of the affordable housing or just building of the development? So it's one of those sort of however many times bitten, a bit shy. Thank you, Chair.
Valerie, do you want to come back on that?
I think it's a very valid point. I think if we've got planning permission, then the expectation is that it will be delivered. Under the current climate, you are right that it's a bit of a movable feast. Interestingly enough, I've been lucky enough to be part of an LGA initiative where we're trying to get together developers, registered providers and local authorities to try and put a good practice guidance together. And one of the things that we are identifying as a key issue is how early to get registered providers on board. And the aspiration is that we can do something to encourage good practice, which means that when these sites come forward for planning permission, the RP is firmed up and is under contract. And so we have greater confidence that they're going to come forward. I think at the moment developers are flagging up at a very early stage if they think there's issues with getting registered providers on board, just because of how, unfortunately, the last Homes England programme has panned out and has unintended consequences. But it is something that we are aware of and we are working to try and put things in place to give more certainty, definitely on that. And that is, there's representatives on that group from volume house builders, small house builders, for-profit registered providers, not-for-profit registered providers and local authorities across the country. So it's not just a Leicestershire phenomenon or a Hinckley and Bosworth phenomenon, it is across the board. But it is acknowledged that it can be an issue.
I've got a really innovative solution. If the councils had preferred partner housing associations that the developers had to use, I think we used to do that, didn't we? Anyway, things have moved on. Joyce.
Thank you very much. I'm quite pleased to hear that that initiative is going forward, Valerie, because it's something that we've talked about so many times, that when we have a policy of 20% in the urban areas and 40% in the rural areas, and yet we're struggling big time to try and meet those because we can't get registered providers on board. So if they can all get together and discuss and come up with a strategy, that would be brilliant. I would like to see, as Richard has just mentioned, that when we get a planning application come in, we have a registered provider on board at that particular time. I know it's difficult, it might delay the development, but at least they know that we are keen to get these affordable housing, social rent, whatever, within that development. It's very difficult with the smaller developments, anything around about 50, because some registered providers don't want to do small schemes. But having said that, you've got Homes England built a big 99 houses in Balston, which are all either shared ownership or social housing. And it's going back to the old-fashioned type of kind of council estates, which is something that we actually moved away from. And it just seems so strange, you know, that it's going backwards instead of forwards. But, yeah, I should be pleased to hear what the outcome of that is. Thank you.
Any response, Barry? Or?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we know it's an issue. And if you look at some of the previous year's deliveries, you're absolutely right, Joyce, that where we've had the big numbers over the last couple of years, it's because there's been a big 100% affordable site come forward. And they are now starting to be players and competing against the volume house builders for sites. So it is something that's moving. And as you say, when we first started, I know it's a long time ago, don't get me wrong, but when I first started here, we weren't really taking 100% affordable housing sites. And if it was above 20, we were like, oh, no, we can't do that, we can't. But it's the way it's going, simply because registered providers can put grant into those sites where they can't put grant into Section 106 sites, so it helps their viability. And of course they've also been hit in the same way as we have as a local authority with some of the new housing initiatives like our OBS law that have impacts on their business cases and how much money they've got to spend on new build. And that's impacted on how much delivery we're getting as well. So it's been a bit of a perfect storm, I think, in the last couple of years, but hopefully we're learning from it. And as I say, there are things going forward where we're trying to be a lot more proactive in how we work these things. We've got the clearinghouse now, where developers can go if they can't find an RP partner and see if there's any RPs with that. As I say, we're looking at early engagement. One of the questions that we are going to be asking RPs is there a minimum number of units that you'll take on Section 106? Because if we know we've got no chance of getting those smaller units, we've got to think about how we approach that through the planning process and what we're going to do. Because there's no point in saying to a developer, you know, you've got to provide 2 units of affordable housing and know that they're not going to get any takers for it. So, you know, we've got to really be work a bit smarter, I think, as to how we keep up with what's actually happening on the ground.
Richard, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, if we could just get confirmation, if we could get a breakdown of type, please. And also an observation. We've got a Midland Heart development in Old Shilton that's going up of 50. And then just a little bit further down the hill, there's a private market development. I'd have to say the observation is the Midland Heart homes are far better built than the private ones further down the hill, which don't look great.
Thank you for that. Can officers undertake to let Richard have a breakdown of the types of properties as requested? Is that okay? Not now, but after the meeting, please. All right. Thank you.
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure we'd know, because I know what I negotiate, so it will be available, but it's not something we've collated so far.
Thanks. Miriam.
Do we ever ask builders to build a certain type of affordable housing to meet, if you like, the needs of the borough?
All the time. All the time. And I actually work closely with our allocation staff, who are absolutely brilliant at knowing what's needed where. So if I'm ever in any doubt, I just give them a quick ring and I just say, what do we need in this settlement? The problem that we do have, and everybody has, is the issues about getting 1-bedroom properties, because registered providers are very reluctant to take a large number of 1-bedroom properties on a site. So it's another question I'm asking them is, what's the maximum 1 bed you'll take? I currently ask developers not to provide anything that's got communal areas, because RPs don't like that. So I ask for either flats with no communal areas or 1-bedroom houses to try and overcome that. But it is still an issue, and it is flagged up that is always going to be a problem. But yes, I do try and shape what I ask for, and certainly I'm more demanding on the very large sites, where I'll ask for a larger proportion of 4 beds so that we can get some turnover of those. But I do look at, we've got the Housing and Economic Needs Assessment, which gives us a broad overview of what's happening. But as I say, if we're looking down at settlement level and I've got any doubts, allocations are your people every time, because they just know the waiting list like the back of the hand. And so I can tweak it if I need to, and we do have that flexibility to say, well, actually in this area, this is what we're looking for.
Different sections and departments talking to each other. Where will this end? A couple from me, if we can, before we go to the recommendations. At 4.8, you've talked about the use of more flexible approach to selecting RP partners where there's no others available. Can you just give us some reassurance about how the risks are being managed? Because a lot of these new entrants to the market don't have the track record. They don't have the boots on the ground locally. How are we actually dealing with that?
We do have what used to be completely unheard of, which is for-profit registered providers. They are big players in the market on Section 106 sites at the moment, and quite a lot of the sites are being picked up by them. Normally the for-profits own the properties but let them out to a management company who do the housing management side of it. The ones that we have that are proactive in the borough at the moment have got a very well established management registered provider working with them. The Section 106 agreements all say that anybody who comes forward to take the affordable housing has got to be registered with Homes England or anybody else as agreed by the council. In practice, I've never agreed anybody who isn't registered with Homes England. Our representative at Homes England, Christine Seaton, is very, very proactive about giving information about, you know, whether they're comfortable with it and whether they're an unknown quantity. At the moment, some of our fellow districts in Leicestershire seem to have a lot more involvement. We seem to be the Johnny-come-latelys, which I am not altogether unhappy about. So I can ring my colleagues in other districts and say, have you got these working in your area? What are they like? Have you got any worries? And we share information like that. So we do put feelers out. But at the moment, it is one of the things that we are tentatively looking at. We don't have a lot. Where they've approached, I've always said that I will give a site a try with that one provider, but not committed to anything else. So it is a little bit at the moment at early stages, and we're just going to have to see how it shakes down and just hope that under the new programme some of our not-for-profit RPs will start picking up the Section 106s alongside the for-profits.
Thank you. It's just important, I think, that members realise that there are new players in the market and there may be people picking up these properties that we haven't seen in the past and having a presence in our area, but there are checks and balances in place to make sure that they're up to scratch. So that's good to know. Thank you. My other question, just related to the total open market housing completions column on the appendix. And I just seeking confirmation, really, that the figures for the last 3 years are correct. So we had 533 completions in 22-23, a drop to 326 in 23-24, and then a drop to 153 in 24-25. Is that right?
I can't comment on that because I'm affordable housing only, so I'll have to double check with our monitoring officer and come back to you. I've taken the figures that I've been given as correct, and I have no reason to doubt them, but I will double check.
Just seemed to be a significant reduction, and that I wasn't expecting it to be that significant. So if someone can just check and come back to me, I'd be really grateful. Okay, thank you. Any other questions at all before we move to the recommendations? Yes, Miriam.
106 money, do we ever work with some of the homeless charities who provide accommodation around Leicestershire to get 106 money to help them increase their, if you like, stock of properties?
I am sorry, Miriam, I missed the beginning of that.
Do we ever work with homeless charities?
Homeless
charities within Leicestershire, of which there are a number, who provide accommodation to that group of people within our community to access 106 money to help them acquire the buildings that they need to accommodate this group of people?
The way that funding works for that sort of accommodation is slightly different. You can bid for homeless money through Homes England grant, I believe. Again, it's not ring fence, so it would just be a bid alongside other RP providers. I do work closely with County, and we have provided supported housing within the borough, but that's not necessarily been for homeless. We've delivered schemes for people with learning disabilities and autism. So it is something that we work with, and we are very keen to to do. We went through a bit of a lull when, if you can remember, supporting people coming forward, and nothing was delivered then, and we're very aware that we're running behind and we need to pick up again. So we are being quite proactive with that. Some of the registered providers have got the expertise in those sort of client groups anyway, and will be doing their own bids and their own working forward. I think specifically with homelessness, I haven't been involved personally in Section 106 for that client group, but I don't know whether that's because there's been separate pots of funding coming forward in the past that I've not been involved with as part of my work. So it may be that, you know, it's more the homelessness team that would be involved in that.
Did you want to come in, Maddie?
Sure, thank you. So just to add to what Valerie said, really, certainly in terms of our relationships and work with our charitable partners, we actually had a meeting yesterday with one of them locally about what we could do, really, and that's certainly something that we'll be exploring. So yeah, there is work ongoing about some of that to meet our homelessness requirements with charities. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, William. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll move us to the recommendations on the report, which is that we note the contents of this report and that we note the positive delivery of completions and permissions of affordable housing in the borough, which has exceeded the core strategy targets. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Joyce to propose, Robin to second. Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Valerie. You're welcome to stay, however, you may have other things to do. Sorry, that takes us on to Daniel. It's your moment in the spotlight for the Economic Regeneration Strategy. Daniel.
Hi everyone. So the purpose of this report is to seek endorsement of the Economic Regeneration Strategy 2026 to 2029. By way of background, the strategy provides the background, vision, opportunities for economic growth, key statistics and aims around the themes of people, places and prosperity in line with the corporate plan themes. The strategy was subject to a 6-week consultation and a roundtable event. Comments were reviewed and amendments made to the strategy where appropriate. And then the second document is the key achievements from the previous strategy, 2021 to 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Always an interesting report. So much going on that it's not like the swan on the surface, and this report tells us how the feet are going underneath. Do we have any questions for Daniel, please? No? I always say it's the sign of a good report, Daniel, all right? Because you've answered all the questions in your report. Okay, so our recommendation is that Scrutiny endorse the Economic Strategy 26, or Scrutiny endorse the Economic Regeneration Strategy 26 to 2029, and that note the Economic Regeneration Strategy 21 to 25 key achievements. We do have a proposer and a seconder. Robin, thank you, and thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. Right. That takes us on to item 12, the Young People Strategy. Maddie, I believe this is you.
Thank you. Sorry. So I'm presenting this report this evening for my colleague, Rachel Burgess, but I'm joined by our young person lead here, Amy, who's going to take some questions, hopefully, if there are any. So the report represents the refreshed Young People Strategy for 2026 to 2029 and Appendix 1, which details the work the Council will undertake in relation to young people aged 11 to 19 years old and up to 25 years old for those with special educational needs or disabilities. The report also provides key achievements to date against the current 3-year strategy, which is summarised in Appendix 2 and 3. As the current 3-year strategy comes to an end, the report evidences the significant success of the current strategy and the numerous achievements that have been realised. It is key that we ensure that our work regarding young people is young people-led. The strategy for 26-29 has been co-developed with young people across the borough, with young people from secondary schools and SEND provisions, alongside work with young people who we are working with in relation to domestic abuse support. And some of the key challenges incorporated based on the views of young people include Changing the design of the strategy, young people had very strong views about the design, making it visually appealing to young people in a format and style that would be made easier to read. Changes in language to make it more relatable to young people. Addition of key topic areas that young people raise as priorities, such as vaping and smoking, personal safety, knife awareness and democracy. Service areas across the Council have contributed to the formulation of this strategy, helping to ensure we capture key work streams and highlight the extensive work that takes place across the authority. The strategy details the work the authority will do and via work with partners to help enable young people to gain employment and be work ready, be empowered to make informed choices and shape their future, be able to enjoy access to activities, to be safe and feel safe, and to be healthy, including physical and mental health. And the strategy will be monitored via annual reviews and refreshes. It is recommended that Scrutiny endorse the new Young People Strategy 26 to 29, acknowledge and endorse the significant amount of work to be carried out across the Council in relation to young people and the significant achievements over the life cycle of the last 3-year strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Michael, you're here as the portfolio holder. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, firstly, just to show my appreciation to the officers who put together the strategy. Also to say that I think, as Maddie has mentioned, the important thing is that young people themselves did influence heavily the priorities that were in the document, and that's important that we do listen to them about what their priorities are when we put this together. And there's a huge amount that takes place in terms of support and engagement work that's carried out, which is listed in the document. A lot of things have taken place over the last 3 years, including, of course, probably most notably the very well-attended youth conference in 2025 that the Council organised. So altogether, I think there's a lot of stuff that takes place to support young people in the borough, and I welcome the strategy.
Thank you very much, Michael. Robin, would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Chair. In case anybody's ever noticed, I'm a kind of middle-aged man in a suit, so I probably can't represent particularly brilliantly the voices of children and young people across the borough, and yet I am children and young people's champion, which is great. The work that the Council and the officers has undertaken in this area is significant. And if we sit and focus on a national picture of 1 million young people being neat, that's people with lost aspiration, whose voices are not heard, where they do not feel there's kind of representation or they're part of communities or connected to each other. And yet there's a set of work that this Council has sat down to undertake to promote and champion the causes of children and young people from all sorts of different backgrounds who face all sorts of different barriers. So, I've had a great privilege of watching this work develop over the last, few years, and I remember being in this chamber saying, we need to have a young people's strategy. And I work in several, in my day job, in several different regions across the country with other local authorities who are looking at the work that we are doing as areas of good practice. So I wholly endorse the work that's been done here and the strategic work and its importance. And I want to thank officers for doing some amazing work in what has been, it's challenging out there and it's tough out there. And working with young people is, they deserve a voice and they deserve empowerment, and it's difficult in the current climate to do. So I want to say thank you, and I want the Council to keep up this work because it's critical for the future of the borough and for the town and surrounding villages.
Thank you very much for that, Robin. Right. Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I think one of the challenges, well, not just here in Bosworth, but nationally, is that young people seem to have unemployment rates that are higher than most other groups. I don't know if it's still the case. Going back to when I'd left university and was taking my sort of steam-powered bicycle to work or whatever it was, there was a lot of employers that were, well, that's great, you've got your degree, you've got whatever qualifications it is, you haven't got any experience. Come back when you've got experience. Well, it's kind of, if you won't give me a job, how do I get experience? So I think that there is this almost perennial challenge for young people to actually make that first step to get into employment and then build their careers from there. Is there anything that we as a council can do to try and help that or promote it? Just interesting sort of, see if there's any ideas that anyone could bounce off the room. Thank you, Chair.
Maddie, Amy, who wants to take that one?
Yeah, so it was 2 years ago that we developed our Working With Us careers package for young people. So we started going into all of the secondary schools, supporting with their careers events. They hold speed networking events that we support with as well. And then as part of our Employment and Skills Task Force, which has businesses and schools in the borough, just this week we held our first work experience workshop to get the voices from businesses and schools to see how we can put work experience in place that works for both, to get them young people that can't get their own work experience place, they can have it in a school setting or in kind of a middle setting that the businesses and schools can come into. So we're always working to develop with businesses and linking them in with schools and seeing what more opportunities we can offer to young people. We do offer work experience ourselves, so we promote us as a borough council for students to come in and do work experience, and we also promote volunteering opportunities as well.
Thank you, Amy. It's so important just to establish the principles of working in the minds of these young people and get them. I'm trying to get my granddaughter a paper round. There are no paper rounds anymore, and that was always a very easy way into it in the past. So yeah, it's good to hear that we're working in that area. Joyce, did you want?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to congratulate the team on the report. What we have to remember is that these youngsters are the future of this country. You know, this is why it's so important that we actually try and promote and help them along the way. And I think that you're doing a tremendous job, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Like everyone else so far, really congratulations on this report. It's fantastic. Just a couple of questions. Is there any part of this that reaches out to children who are not in education, not in formal education, but are being homeschooled? And what about some of the homelessness issues around when they're leaving? Because I know both homelessness and homeschooling can lead to additional difficulties, as well as the SEND issues that mean employment is so hard. And that's it. Thank you.
One of you's got to step forward. I don't mind who.
Do you want to come back to me on that one?
Sorry, no, I was just remembering. So homeschooling is a bit of a tricky one for us because we don't necessarily know how to reach them. So it would be more so the things that we're promoting, say on the website or through different brochures that we produce. We hope then we're reaching them that way, or if they're coming to events and things like that. But it is a bit of a tricky one to reach, and I think even sometimes it's more the county council, because their education, they'd be aware of young people that are homeschooled. But we can definitely look into linking in with the county council to be more aware of how many young people are homeschooled in our borough, or linking in with them to offer them opportunities as well.
Thank you. That would be absolutely fantastic. I know homeschooling is on the increase, so if we can reach out to them as well, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just picking up on a point that Richard made, engaging employers, and I'm always amazed with the youth conference that we arrange in this place. And I'm just wondering if there's any opportunities to try to engage with some of the employers that we don't manage to engage with into that sort of environment, because my experience of the youth conference is that the young people are their own advocates of how fantastic they are in tackling some of those things. And I'm just wondering if it would be a way of engaging with the people that we find hard to reach, because you obviously have a good relationship with the people that you have a relationship with. It's the ones that are difficult, and whether we can maximise those opportunities, because we certainly in the next 2 years have to demonstrate the value that we deliver, or well, not you deliver through these services, to make sure that it's taken forward in whatever organisation comes next.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions? James?
Just one point, and this really comes from my experience dealing with university admissions. I find there's quite a big gap, social gap, between those who come to university on applications with significant work experience and those who don't. And while I haven't done a piece of scientific research around this, it's clear that quite a few of the kids who come with work experience are clearly from wealthier backgrounds, well-connected parents often clearly arranging things for their children. That's all well and good. But there just be a class division there, that a lot of working class kids aren't getting the same sort of opportunities to do work experience prior to university. And I wonder how we might go about trying to address that sort of inequality that does seem to me very apparent from my own experience. And certainly, I think this is a great report, and don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic work being done. But only 9 work experience placements are actually noted in it. Now, I'd like to see that number be a bit larger. Maybe there isn't quite the demand at the moment, but I think going forward, that does seem to be something we could perhaps work on, and particularly targeting those social groups that might not necessarily have opportunities to get high-profile placements through, well-connected parents.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we could look at, working with partners that are supporting them young people that need a bit of extra support, to look at getting them into work experience here. That's obviously the numbers that we support, but not the young people in the borough as a whole. And just on work experience, so we offer something called Unbox Your Future, which I think I mentioned briefly earlier about how work experience, taking it into the school, that works with a larger group of young people, connecting them to a business. So the business is going into the school to support them, giving them projects to do, and then they'll feed it back to the leader from the business. So it's giving them a bit of a different opportunity than going into a work experience placement, and having it open to more students than just the one that can go into a work experience placement.
Thank you. Robin?
Maybe I should declare an interest here, because my actual day job is working in post-16 education. So there are statutory obligations around work experience, and those statutory obligations are increasing for younger individuals. There is when young people are not in education, employment or training, actually the markers of that can be seen. So although the measure counts when people are post-16, there are databases and markers that can be seen prior to individuals turning 16. And I think one of the things that this report is highlighting, and maybe needs to be brought out more, and then there may be some further things we can do in order to do that, is giving people the confidence to be able to send emails, connect with employers, gain a kind of sense of cultural capital, which is not particularly existent in our statutory education system as it currently sits. There's all sorts of complicated reasons for that, and I'd quite happily discuss them and debate them all night long, but you probably want to crack on with a meeting, Chair. But there are all sorts of philosophies that we could get into. I think there may be a role for us to extend some of that good work that started, but getting people just to pick up the phone and do it, is the kind of key bit, and then it's how we support those providers where there is a statutory obligation, I think.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah, I'm sure we can all relate to that from contacts that we've got within our families, that it isn't, a lot of the things that you would have taken for granted many years ago appear to be a much bigger challenge to some of the youngsters today. We have to help them through that, or we have to find new ways of engaging with them that don't require them to do that. It's not for them to change to suit our world. It may be that our world has to change to make them feel welcome within it. That's all challenges for the future. So there's another page to add to the next strategy. Okay. Richard, did you want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. It's probably just almost a bit of a final comment, if you like. So, work experience, which typically a week or a couple of weeks, is sort of great and obviously has a place in helping people potentially get into that bit of a work mindset, if you like. But I think from the figures, the real challenge we've got is almost the employers having the confidence to actually take on these young people and give them that first job, which will be on their CV, to then enable them to sort of decide whatever their dream is and then go for it. Because if you can't get that first step, and I think we see that far too often, it creates problems. So anything we can do to try and help people into that first rung on their employment life would have to be encouraged. Thank you, Chair.
Completely agree. And it's like the equity card situation, isn't it? You can't become an actor until you've got an equity card. You can't get an equity card until you're an actor. And the cycle continues. We need to break that. You're so right. If there's no more questions, I'll move. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for this? Richard to propose, seconded by Claire. All those in favour? Thank you. And can I thank you for your presentation, Amy and Maddie? Thank you. Right, that takes us on then to the item that we brought forward, which is the review of recommendations from the Planning Service. This predates me. So the planning review was undertaken some years ago and provided a platform for the changes to the housing service, to the planning service, which we now see the benefits of in terms of the changed performance situation. So I've probably stolen half of Chris's presentation, introduction, or Maddie's introduction, but I'll hand over to her now. Maddie.
Thank you, Chair. So, as some of you will remember, perhaps not the Chair, but you will remember that the Scrutiny Commission requested an update on progress made since the 2022 Scrutiny Review of the Planning Service, which was initiated following high staff turnover, increasing workloads and delays in processing applications and appeals. The 2022 review identified several key issues, including excessive workloads, inappropriate member behaviour sometimes, member overturns at planning committee, and challenges created by fixed-term posts. These were also influenced by national pressures on planner recruitment and retention, and a cross-party task and finish group made a series of recommendations that were incorporated into a wider service action plan led by the then Director of Communities, who is now, of course, the Deputy Chief Executive, Sharon Stacey. So in terms of progress against the recommendations, members should note strong sustained improvements have been made across all areas, including culture and morale, ICT reporting tools, member and officer relations, member training and engagement, performance monitoring, appeals performance and associated monitoring. And scrutiny members should also note that all recommendations have been progressed, and the journey of the planning service has been well documented since the scrutiny review took place, with numerous successes, including a stable and happy staffing structure and improvements in planning performance, culminating in winning Planning Team of the Year at the RTPI East Midlands Awards in 2024 and being shortlisted in the national finals. In addition, an individual officer has been awarded highly commended for Young Planner of the Year by the RTPI East Midlands Award in 2025. Performance has improved to the point that there is currently no risk of designation by government. Recruitment and retention has been highly successful, defying national trends, and progress on the local plan and sustainable urban extension has also accelerated since the 2022 review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maddie. I think, again, it's important that we do revisit these reviews, and I hope that someone will review some of the reviews that have been part of our tenure as this political cycle. And a very positive report, and it's very good to have this in front of us, because it is it was a department with problems. I think it's fair to say, and the government certainly thought so as well. So to have come this far in what is really a short timetable for service improvements is really very impressive. Richard, did you have any question?
Yeah, so possibly more of an observation. Thank you, Jess. Maddie, thank you for the report. I think it's worth saying, as someone who was here during that time, it was deeply uncomfortable for everyone involved. I think we got to the point where, within the space of about 4 months, if you looked at the list of people who were on the staff at the start of the period, there was not one name left at the end of the period, which was quite remarkable. There seemed to be almost a cascade. So, you know, all credit to everyone in the department who's picked it up and turned it around. But I think special recognition needs to go to Sharon for essentially grasping the nettle and managing it through, and also to Chris for having the guts, shall we say, to actually come in and say, yeah, I'll be your head of planning. I haven't got a planning department, but I'll be the head of it, and sort of building it up from there to, you know, the excellent departments and officers that we've got now. So all credit to everyone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Joyce.
Yes, thank you very much. We must also remember, Richard, that when Chris came in and the little staff that he'd got, to go and actually get awards, you know, and be noted that we are one of the best planning authorities in Leicestershire, if not in the country. So, you know, we must take that into account and congratulate Chris, Sharon and all the other planning officers for their hard work and the way that they're going about things, because at one time we couldn't get any staff. We couldn't get any planners at all. But then the reputation of the department started to rise, and then we got loads of people that were queuing up to come to join us. So, you know, that's a recommendation in itself. It really is. And I just congratulate everyone on the work that they're carrying out. But there's a lot to go on in the future with the, you know, planning reforms and so on and so forth. It's going to be a difficult few years. I mean, whatever happens with the local government reorganisation, you know, they've still got to carry on doing the work that they're doing. So, yeah, thanks very much to the staff, to Chris and to Sharon. Thank you.
Any other questions at all? Paul?
Well, as the one remaining person that was actually on the review, obviously it's completely different situation to what we actually set the review up to look at. But there's important lessons to learn from that process, which is early warning signs, and that it's not all necessarily about the officers, because there were member involvement in the things, and if you read all the recommendations in the report, there was one or two things that needed to be ironed out in that direction. And I don't think it relates entirely just to planning. I think the same things, particularly monitoring staff absences and sickness is a good indication that something is going wrong. Understanding workloads, and that's the one question that I would ask from the report, which is 352. The indication of workload that was being managed within the organisation at the time was pretty basic. In other words, we were monitoring the workload in terms of how many minor applications and how many major applications, and not very much more than that, without any indication of the amount of appeals that were going through, the size of major applications, which can be fantastically different, and the circumstances. And I would just ask, have we, because I can't see from the report at the moment that we've really got a little bit of a way into doing more workload forecasting by looking at how we estimate workload for a particular set of circumstances and monitor it subsequently to see that, yes, that estimate was wrong, but we're going to update it. And we're also monitoring the situation, because the big problem, and this was a perfect storm, because we had an awful lot of difficulties coming in, and COVID hit at the very same time. But my perception, sitting listening to all the evidence, was that, well, the workload's just got to be done, and by all the team that were left. And that went on for week after week after week, and that's not sustainable at all. So workload planning is very important, that you make sure that you recognise those questions. I've gone on a little bit, but there was a question there. You know, a little bit more information about the way that we estimate and monitor workload would be my question.
Thank you, Paul. Maddie, do you want to start?
So I'm going to just take the second part, and then I'm going to revert to Chris. Obviously, I'm quite late to the planning party, but absolutely, from my interactions with Chris and the team, I think in terms of your latter point, that there is that, and certainly Chris is very good at actually understanding the challenges that his staff have got. And I think certainly in terms of not just workload, but actually things like legal kind of appeals, etc., Chris is very good at actually recognising the impact and the amount of work that people have got, and not being afraid to think about, actually, do we need more capacity here? Do we need to be looking at additional staff? And I think, as you said there, that perhaps that wasn't kind of an option previously, but certainly that is an open discussion that we readily have and are supported by our SLT colleagues now.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to add to what Maddie said, so in terms of monitoring of caseloads and particularly getting down into the detail, so we have improved that from before. So as you mentioned, previously I think it was simply a numbers game. So officer with a number allocated, and whether that number was 40, 60 or 100, you wouldn't know the detail and what was behind that number. So effectively, if it was 100 householder applications, that's quite different to 100 mixed caseload applications, for instance. Now we have a weekly report that's circulated to senior managers within the team, and that provides not only that number breakdown between types of application, but also then provides a full breakdown of each individual application, together with all the relevant key dates of those applications behind each officer as well. So that's circulated on a weekly basis, and a short summary of that is provided to the leader and portfolio holder on a monthly basis as well, in a monthly meeting. So that information is reported up, and it's also reported quarterly to SLT as well. So not the full detail, but the summary of that report is taken further. So effectively, it's, as you mentioned, it's that early warning system. So we monitor that closely. The separate element then of the appeals and the legal matters that we get into, the other thing we've brought in quite early on when I started was the use of planning performance agreements, or PPAs for short, which I don't think we used to the full extent prior to me starting here and bringing in templates that I'd used elsewhere. So that's a mechanism where we use the developer to pay us a fee effectively for officer time, and then we can use that either to commit a greater officer resource here, but with the relevant monitoring in place, or we can use that to outsource. And we use that particularly well for the major applications, so some of the much larger applications that would take up a lot of existing officer time, or at times where we haven't had that relevant officer speciality in the team, so we can use that to outsource that, but at no other cost to the council. Effectively, the developer's paying for that service. Also, with regards to appeals, so when I started, appeals were a significant issue. They're much less of an issue now. You know, in the past we have had sort of non-stop hearings here in the chamber. Now we can, a lot of those appeals where their officers are involved and officers are happy to lead on those appeals, then we will do so. and that significantly keeps costs down as well. Where an appeal is a result of a member overturn, I think in the past that's still been relied on officers to do that, and that's where we'd struggled a lot from a work resourcing point of view, and in terms of struggling to defend such an appeal as well. Whereas now we can use legal expertise and external consultants to do that for us. So the officers are still involved all the way through, particularly in the background work to appeals, but the key and the most lengthy resource-heavy parts of the appeals we can often outsource, which helps from a workload monitoring as well, and effectively try and leave our planning officers to deal with planning applications rather than the relevant admin sides and other burdens that can come with it as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. That was very, very interesting, and I'm very pleased to hear that report. And I hope, whatever the future holds, you've got a good basis to take that forward to whatever situation in the structure of the county goes forward, because these things may well recur, or because we could get difficulties through that transition period.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, it's about us being in a position to lead those debates, isn't it? To come forward with solutions to the problems that other people perhaps haven't thought of yet in a new council environment. James.
Yeah, as a relative new boy, but as Vice Chair of Planning, I just want to put on record how impressed I've been by all the planning staff I've dealt with. I think the level of professionalism, the quality of the advice, the detail of the advice is really very impressive indeed, and I kind of commend them for that. And there are very few occasions where I've had to disagree with what they've said, frankly, which is always a good sign. Just a very minor point, 359, yeah, I think it's important as we can as officers, as members, to engage with officers where we have concerns with applications or do feel we need to overturn them or challenge them. On the other hand, I also think it's important that we always should be free to actually challenge them if we feel it's appropriate to do so, because frankly sometimes other information comes up from the community or additional legal advice might be offered by outsiders who might have a different perspective on these things. So I do agree, of course, the principle that's been laid down there. We just also need to bear in mind that members are the ones who ultimately decide. Okay.
Duly noted, I'm sure. Yes? Okay. Any other questions at all? No? I found it a really, really interesting report and a great validation of what's gone on. The glue that always binds these journeys together is leadership. And without that, direction can be lost, momentum can be lost, and I think we've been very, very fortunate to have very clear and very focused leadership of this journey, and I don't think we'd be where we are without it. So well done to all those involved. Okay, the recommendations of the report are that Scrutiny notes the positive outcome against the Scrutiny Planning Review recommendations, and that Scrutiny notes the ongoing positive direction of the Planning Service noted in 3.6. Proposed Joyce, seconder. Richard, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. You're free to leave, Chris, should you wish to do so. Leave on a high. Right. That takes us on then into a series now of housing-related reports that we need to work our way through, a comprehensive preparations for regulation and just good practice, I'm sure, that we would be doing anyway. So the first of those is the Council Housing Land Strategy. Mr Taylor, is that one for you to take to the stage?
Thank you, Chair. I won't go too much into the report because it's pretty short, but if I can, I'll just go straight to the. It outlines the proposed council housing land strategy, to ensure that we're managing HOA land assets effectively. And if I may, I'll just jump to the 4 objectives around that: effective management and maintenance of HOA assets, strategic development of regeneration or disposal to increase housing supply and support investment. Environmental enhancements through carbon reduction offsetting schemes, and improve utility of garage sites and car parks, especially for parking and EV infrastructure. The strategy aligns with Council's broader corporate priorities, particularly around place and also links in with some of the discussions we've had earlier around Caroline, so increasing biodiversity on some of our sites, and Valerie in terms of that affordable housing supply and improvements that we'd like to see.
Thank you very much, Clive. Any questions for Clive on the HRA land strategy report? No? Oh, Miriam.
I live in Desford, and there was a council house sold a number of years ago. It was on the corner, and they've actually, private developer has built 4 houses on that piece of land, and I think Joyce knows it. And there are lots of council houses that we still own with very large gardens that are sometimes in a dreadful state, but it is land. It is land that potentially we could put some houses on or get somebody to build on. Do we have a process for that? Have we got a thought process, or et cetera, et cetera? Is there any reason why we can't do it or can do it?
So we always look at opportunities where we can take back some of those gardens. The difficulty that we've had is that for us to develop them ourselves, it's quite costly because there's low numbers. So again, liaising with Valerie, we look at opportunities where we can perhaps parcel them up if we've got some in an area, or we look to dispose of them and use the capital receipts to fund other projects. So there are examples where we've done that, and particularly elderly people have found their gardens are too big to manage, and we have fenced them off. Again, the other difficulty is its ongoing maintenance of those is a cost. But the land strategy will help to kind of tackle and deal with some of those a bit more proactively. But tenancy management officers are always forwarding me details of sites like that where we can try and look at other options. But development is difficult for us in terms of the size of and numbers we can get on those sites.
Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know some years ago we did try to put in a codicil or something on when a tenant takes over a property, that should we require the garden. I can't remember exactly what the wording was, but we certainly looked at trying to, if a right to buy came in, that we had the opportunity to take back some of the land that wasn't used. In respect of those that are on the corner of St Martin's Drive and Maple Way, I mean, it was a huge garden, and to be able to, they increased the size of the house and then built 4 others as well. And that was our loss, you know. And
that was council land,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they have actually built 3-bedroomed houses with car parking down the side of each house.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that it's
and
not,
that was our loss.
And that was our loss, and it's not tight housing they've built. They've actually built sensible housing that is now rented.
And it should have been us that was doing it. I know that there's a difficulty.
And, you know, yes, we might not be able to build on the land, but surely we can parcel it up and get somebody else, because this was a private builder who's actually put those properties there and is now making money out of them.
I'm sure we can...
The trouble is, he'd got a right to buy. The tenant had taken up the right to buy, which included the land. So we hadn't got a leg to stand on.
I think the principle of that is put that down as a lesson learned, can't we, in terms of informing future decisions, and yeah, I think there are things that again may change in the future from what was done in the past. So any response at all from yourselves on that one, Clive?
Well, you will get a right to buy policy coming through very soon, so that's my other area of work. Right to buy is quite difficult because there's a lot of statutory stuff in right to buy, and when we set up a tenancy for a property, they are entitled to purchase all of what was given to them under their tenancy. And we can take back land, but it has to be in negotiation and agreement with the tenant. You're quite right, Councillor Crooks. We did look at if there were restrictions we could put on sales to prevent them from developing, and legal gave us quite clear instructions that we couldn't. So what we try to do is make sure that when we carry out the valuations, we also look at any development potential for those properties. So but as I said, right to buy is statutory, and it's very restricted in what we can do, and we have to follow what is given to them in the tenancy. So So we are proactively looking at some of those larger sites, and not just for development, but as I say, for some of the other things, biodiversity and things like that. So we are looking at those things.
Okay, if there's no further questions, there's just one from me. Do you use net present values assessments in your decision-making process in terms of acquisitions, disposals? Is that part of the process?
Yes, I think it is. Yes. So we would get them independently valued, and we would look at that as well. Yes. Yeah.
The net present value being a way of actually monetising the future income stream from a property versus the loss of its value to the council inputting the improvement. So that is part of the land value process. Okay. Thank you. Okay. If there are no other questions, then we'll move to the recommendations, which are, sorry, I managed to get myself on the wrong page, that the Scrutiny Commission notes the report and accompanying strategy, and that the Scrutiny Commission endorses the HRA land strategy. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Richard proposed, Claire second. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much, Clive. Okay. Our next policy is the tenancy policy. Kim, I believe you're presenting this one.
Yeah, thank
Welcome.
you. Okay, so the purpose of the report is to seek the endorsement of the Scrutiny Commission for the tenancy policy, which outlines the Council's approach to managing its housing stock, determining tenancy types and ensuring compliance with relevant legislation. In terms of the background of the report, the policy establishes the framework for granting, managing and terminating tenancies in accordance with legislation, including the Housing Act 1985, the Housing Act 1996, the Localism Act 2011 and any subsequent amendments. The policy ensures legal compliance in the allocation and management of council tenancies, and also ensures the properties are allocated in a fair and transparent manner whilst optimising stock use. It provides clear guidance on tenancy types, including introductory, secure and demoted tenancies. It also outlines the process for tenancy succession, mutual exchange and tenancy terminations. In terms of tenancy engagement, the policy has been supported by our tenants through their involvement in the Readers Panel. The feedback highlighted the need for clear language, guidance on joint tenancies and transparency in decision-making processes. Following the feedback, we have introduced a glossary of terms to improve understanding, strengthen communication procedures, considered inclusive design for accessibility and enhanced the complaints and feedback mechanism to promote transparency and accountability. In terms of implementation, housing officers will be trained on policy changes. The policy will be communicated with tenants via email, digital channels and housing newsletters, and it will be publicised on the Council's website, and regular policy reviews will take place to ensure compliance and effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Any questions at all from anybody? Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just essentially like to recognise the excellent work that our housing team do. Through the day job, there does sometimes seem to be almost a misconception that the council isn't actually a housing provider of last resort. It's almost an estate agency. You get the, well, I've got a council house here, there's a nice one round the corner, why can't I have that one? That's not really what we're here to do. But all of the interactions with the team, they've always been massively helpful and done whatever they can to try and help people out, whatever situation they're in. So I have the greatest respect for them and thank them for their efforts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. Any other? Joyce?
Just to say, it's very good to see that the tenants themselves have had quite an input into this report, you know, and I think that's the way forward and that's the way to go. And thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other comments or questions? Can I just ask, what's the main difference between this policy and its predecessor?
This policy kind of combines things that are in other policies, if that makes sense. So mutual exchange policy, the bits of the mutual exchange are currently in the allocations policy, which doesn't really fit with how we work. Successions has a separate policy, but it's really outdated. So this is kind of the first time we brought everything together, which is the main thing, and it clearly outlines how we want to do things, how we do things going forward, whereas currently we don't really have that.
Thank you. Michael, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to add my appreciation to all the housing team for putting together the whole variety of updated documents that you've got before you today, which has involved a lot of work in making sure that we refresh and update our policies. And to say also, particularly as Councillor Crooks mentioned, welcome the fact that there was involvement of the tenants' representatives themselves in terms of drawing up the document as well. And it's important that we do engage regularly with tenants to ensure that their voice is heard in the policies that we put together that affect their lives.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, if there are no other questions, we can move to the recommendations on the report, which are that it's recommended that the Scrutiny Commission endorse the tenancy policy at Appendix A and note the proposed tenant engagement and communication plan to support the policy's implementation. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Richard proposed, Joyce second. All those in favour? Great. Okay, thank you very much for the report, Kim. Right, that moves us on then to item 15, the antisocial behaviour policy. Kim again.
Thank you. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to seek the endorsement of the revised ASB policy, which sets out the Council's strategic approach to preventing and managing antisocial behaviour. The updated policy clarifies how we support victims, take proportionate action against perpetrators, and ensures full compliance with the ASB Crime and Policing Act 2014 and the Regulator of Social Housing's consumer standards. So in terms of recommendations, we're seeking endorsement of the Scrutiny Commission to amend the ASB policy. In terms of background of the report, the policy has been updated to reflect the current legislation, including the ASB Crime and Policing Act 2014, and also the Council's responsibilities under the consumer standards and emerging regulatory expectations around transparency, tenant engagement, partnership working, and a victim-centred approach. The policy looks at what is considered to be antisocial behaviour and our approach to dealing with it. It looks at the support we offer to victims and perpetrators. It goes into detail about ASB case reviews and complaints and clarifies the difference between the two, and it looks at the prevention of antisocial behaviour. This policy is relevant to all and not just to local authority tenants. However, we did complete an ASB policy workshop with tenants, despite it being across tenure. In terms of the tenant engagement, the tenants highlighted the following priorities for the ASB policy. They wanted clear guidance on what can and cannot be dealt with, and more specifically, they wanted us to manage expectations. They wanted transparency from officers. They wanted support for victims, particularly with vulnerabilities. And during the workshop, it was clear that there was a lack of knowledge of ASB case reviews across the board. This has all been considered within the updated policy. In terms of implementation, the policy will be delivered by the ASB and tenancy management team and will be embedded into day-to-day service delivery. Staff will receive training on the policy changes and it will be publicised to tenants and on the council website. The policy will be reviewed regularly in line with compliance and legislative changes and effectiveness, which will come in place soon because of the Crime and Policing Act 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Any questions regarding Richard?
Thank you very much, Chair. So, I'd just like to start by saying just how lucky we are to have a resource like the Endeavour team. So, Kim, it's not quite every day I email you, but it's not far off. You must see my email and think, oh no, who now or what now? Just as a question, the impression that we've got is that there's kind of been a general increase, probably either since or even sort of during the pandemic, and it's kind of carried on that there's been an increase in perceived ASB, which sometimes the origins of it can be something really quite minor and simple, and it just escalates into something far bigger. Don't get me wrong, there are quite serious ASB things out there, but on the whole it seems to be there's a general increase in it. So I don't know if that's putting pressure on the team, but in terms of the responses we're getting, I'd say just thank you very much for your support and your assistance. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Richard. Any other questions at all from members? I've seen a lot of these over the years, and this is one of the best, because it's not as long as some that get lost in detail and turn into a procedure, not a policy. And it's very clear what the difference is between ASB when you're a tenant and ASB when you're not, because there's a different relationship there. There's a tenancy agreement that provides additional scope to deal with whatever the challenges are. So congratulations, well done. It's a really, really good report. Okay, that takes us back then to the recommendations on this report, which are that the Scrutiny Commission endorsed the tenancy policy and notes the proposed tenant engagement and communication plan to support the policy's implementation. Proposer and seconder? Proposed Richard, seconded Claire. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Thanks, Kim. Okay, that takes us then to the decant and mutual exchange policy. You're on a roll. Keep going, Kim.
You'll be fed up with me in a minute. Okay, so the purpose of the report is to present the updated mutual exchange and decant policies to seek the endorsement of Scrutiny Commission. These policies form part of the Council's statutory landlord responsibilities and ensure legally compliant processes for managing decants and mutual exchanges across the council housing stock. In terms of the background of the report, both policies have been updated to reflect current legislation, the Council's responsibilities under the consumer standards and emerging regulatory expectations around transparency and tenant engagement, and the revised processes ensure fairness, efficiency and clarity for tenants and staff. So in terms of the decant policy, the key features are that it provides a structured approach for situations where tenants must be temporarily or permanently moved from their home. It allows for a single point of contact for each case. There is a commitment to suitable alternative accommodation. We offer support with removals, furniture, reconnection costs and storage where required. There is a specific provision for vulnerable households and there are clear expectations regarding costs, compensation and home loss disturbance payments. In terms of the mutual exchange policy, the key features are that it explains how we will manage the mutual exchange process. It gives a clear explanation of eligibility based on tenancy type, so secure, introductory or demoted. It explains the expected compliance with tenancy obligations. It details the primary online system of Home Swapper, and it gives an explanation of types of exchange, including assignment and surrender and regrant. It fully defines the application and assessment process, and it details the grounds for refusal which is purely based on legislation. It also outlines the review process. So in terms of tenant engagement, tenant feedback has informed the development of both policies, and key themes identified include the need for improved communication with tenants, a priority to strengthen communication between internal departments, and a requirement to increase the awareness of processes amongst staff. In terms of implementation, subject to approval, the implementation plan includes staff training for the ASB and tenancy management team alongside housing repairs and housing allocations, to publicise the policies on the Council's website and to develop promotional material to assist tenants with understanding both policies and procedures because they can be quite detailed and quite complicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Any questions or comments from anybody regarding this policy? No? A couple from me, if I may. A permanent decant, isn't that a transfer?
Technically. So what we would do, we have it quite a lot where they move, but then they end up staying there, is kind of the, and actually it works sometimes better with us for the better use of housing stock. So sometimes we encourage that, but it tends to be down to the tenant and it's tenant choice, and we don't want to move them back if actually the property they've gone to is suitable. So it kind of works around each case.
In my head, a decant is where you retain your tenancy at the original address and you have use of another property. So a permanent decant just would seem to be a little bit of a oxymoron, is that what they're called? But yeah, I've got another one, but I'll defer that until Joyce comes in.
Some years ago, Preston Drive Estate in New Bolverden had to have millions of pounds of work carried out, and some of the tenants were decanted into mobile properties whilst the houses were being done. So that's another way of, you know, terming decant. And then they went back into the properties following the refurbishment. So that was quite an extensive, I'm going back now to the early 80s, late 90s, yeah. So
that must have been quite an undertaking, yeah. Paul?
Yes, just an understanding, because I've not got a good understanding of this, but this policy would be the sort of policy that that tenants wouldn't really be aware of until we approach them, presumably, because something could occur to say, well, we need to move you, and here's the way that we will manage that transition. Whereas the policy exchange, the exchange is something that they might be aware of because they would be interested. Have I got that right?
Yes, completely. I think unless a tenant knows about another tenant having been decanted because of a repairs issue or whatever it might be, they are probably likely to be unaware that this is something that we'll do. But like you say, with mutual exchanges, particularly now, we are encouraging them. Because of the housing need and because of the lack of housing stock, we are very much advertising mutual exchanges. So I think that's a lot more known across the board. But yeah, you are right. Decants probably wouldn't necessarily be known unless you're in that situation.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Last one from me. Home loss payments, statutory formula for compensation, is that still in use? There used to be an inflation in figure you had to apply every year to it to get the current year's figure. And do we actually have a budget for home loss payment? Or how is it actually funded when they're required?
So absolutely, the home loss payment, as you say, is based on statutory requirements. In terms of a budget, we don't have a budget unless we've got a specific project, I would say, such as Pegs Close, for example, where we've had significant home loss requirements. So we've tended to manage it ourselves, but yeah, I think generally it's not typical.
Thank you. Thank you. Miriam.
It's just a point of clarification. You talk about surrender and re-grant. What is that, please?
So a tenant can give up their tenancy in effect, and then we can re-grant it to them or somebody else. I think that's probably the simplest way to explain it. Because they can terminate tenancies, we can remove people off tenancy, you can surrender it, and then we can give it back to them or give it back to them. So their tenancy would restart.
Would that be immediate or with a gap in between?
Usually it would be immediate. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head that would be in between, so yeah, I'm pretty sure it would be immediate.
And so why would somebody re-surrender and then be re-granted? Surely there would need to be a change in terms?
Not necessarily.
So probably a good example might be a domestic abuse case where we would have to think about actually how we can support one party particularly. And so surrender is sometimes an option that people would pursue, and they might get external advice around it as well from an advocate, for example.
Okay. No other questions at all on this one? Great. Move on to the recommendation then, that the Scrutiny Commission endorses the updated decant policy at Appendix 1 and endorses the mutual exchange policy at Appendix 2. Any proposer and seconded? Joyce and Robin? All those in favour? That's agreed. Okay. Thank you. Right. Housing aids and adaptations. Lois this time. Welcome, Lois.
Thank you, Chair. So this report introduces the Council Housing Services Aids and Adaptations Policy and asks Scrutiny to endorse its implementation. The policy sets out and clarifies the Council's approach to providing minor and major home adaptations to support tenants with disabilities to live safely and independently. And it reflects that tenants have different lived experiences and needs and empowers officers to offer more tailored and inclusive services. A dedicated tenant engagement session held in January provided tenants with direct access to officers delivering the adaptation service. Feedback highlighted challenges with communication, delays in occupational therapy assessments and limited awareness of available adaptations. Positive experiences were also reported where the housing service had provided clear case management. And this feedback has directly informed the final policy, where we've strengthened commitments to clearer communication, promote access to services and improve staff training. We are developing the skills of 2 members of the repairs surveyors team with trusted assessor training. This model aims to reduce long wait times from social services and allow occupational therapists to focus on more clinical and complex cases, as our assessors will be able to recommend minor adaptations, therefore reducing the bottleneck, speeding up services and reducing hospital discharge delays. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lois. A highly emotive area of work, and something which, when you get it right, is a real absolute benefit to tenants. Occupational therapist delays, I'm sure, remain a challenge in terms of assessment, but some great ideas about how we can sidestep some of those, which is really interesting to read. Joyce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, some years ago, social services were very slow in coming forward to assess some of the tenants who were in need of adaptations. Has it improved recently, or is it still just as bad? Are they still waiting, you know, for... Because what really upsets me is the fact that we're ready to go to do the adaptations, but until social services have been and sorted things out, you can't go ahead. So, you know, it's very difficult. So is it improving, or is it still as bad as it was?
So you're absolutely right. We can sometimes or often be waiting. We're ready to go and do those adaptations. It does tend to kind of peak and trough, to be honest. There are times where we've experienced significant backlogs and tenants don't always know who to chase. They don't know if they should call us or if it's with the assessor. There really is that bottleneck there because they're dealing with, you know, there are multiple services trying to assess tenants to get them back home if they're in hospital and to help them live independently at home. And as that need increases with our ageing population and with people being more aware of the service as well available, we are seeing that backlog. So the trusted assessor training, which will be for 2 surveyors in Gary's team, we're hoping will really speed up that process, and rather than somebody, for example, waiting a long time to have some simple adaptations that can be really life-changing to allowing them to live independently, hopefully we can really speed that process up and leave the occupational therapist to deal with the more complex cases that they need to focus on. So we'll do our bit there where we can.
Any other questions? Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the £1,000 demarcation between minor and major. Is that a figure that's been around for some time, or has it moved? And is it still practical as a value that lets you do the sensible things that just need to get on and done with, or is it becoming an inhibition to getting things speedily done?
So yes, it has been around for some time. I can't tell you how long, but I know that it has been around for a while. It's something that's reflected across both the social sector and the private sector in the disabled facilities grants, and what is identified as a minor and major adaptation is consistent across both of those. So yeah, that is the most up-to-date reflection at the moment of where the definition sits. We do typically look at minor and major adaptations as the type of work as well. I know we certainly do in our housing team. So for example, major adaptations are absolutely things like level access showers, improving access to properties, ramps, etc. And minor adaptations do tend to fall sort of a lot smaller on the scale financially in terms of things like grab rails and smaller adaptations.
Okay, Paul. Thank you, Lois. No others? Okay, just a couple from me. How do you actually make the decision? What criteria do you use regarding a refusal to carry out adaptations and a requirement to move? Because it's stated in here that you do that, but the actual mechanics of doing it are a very different matter. And can you just talk us through how that process actually works? Are there criteria that you use?
Yeah, so in terms of criteria, there are tests that that have to kind of be undertaken, which is done by Gary's team again. And it has to be reasonable and practical for it to take place. So there are examples, there's not very explicit criteria in terms of exactly what somebody would need to kind of pick up on. But what it does look at is if there are cost implications, if it's more reasonable for that person to have more suitable accommodation rather than the cost it would take to undertake that work at their property. So it has to be reasonable and practical for it to take place.
Thanks. Helpful. Gary, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to give an example. So a typical one is elderly people living in a council property that have been there since day one effectively. They have, for example, a level access shower recommendation. They're living alone. We would discuss potential move to a more suitable property for them. Often they will refuse because obviously they've been there, it's their home all their lives. And if that's the case, then effectively we will back down. We will do the work for them. There's only really when there's structural issues with the property where the works physically can't be done is the only real time when we don't do the work.
Okay, thank you. The other one was just around tenant-funded adaptations. Would a DFG be considered to be tenant-funded because the grant goes to the tenant, not to the landlord?
It would be, but we don't have that within council house adaptations. So some local authorities run both processes. We don't, we fund all of ours.
That's nice and simple then. Good. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments? No? Right. That takes us back then to the recommendations. Bear with me 1 second. I'll just scroll back to them. Which are that members endorse the Aids and Adaptations Policy 2026, and the Scrutiny Commission notes the Housing Services approach to train key staff as trusted assessors status, which will reduce wait times for minor adaptation works. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for that one? Richard to propose, Robin to second. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous again. Thank you, Lois, for that. Housing fraud and compensation policies. Two separate policies rather than a fraud and compensation policy. Somebody tried to get you to combine these, and I think it was, with hindsight, I should have left them as separate, but thanks for that. Over to you, Lois.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this report introduces two new council housing service policies, the tenancy fraud policy and the compensation and reimbursement policy. Both have been developed to ensure the service continues to deliver transparent and tenant-focused housing services in line with current legislation, regulatory expectations and best practice. The tenancy fraud policy strengthens the council's approach to preventing and responding to tenancy fraud through enhanced checks, tenancy audits, data matching and clear investigative procedures. The service will take action where fraud is identified, helping protect scarce social housing stock for those in genuine need. The next policy in this report is the Council Housing Services Compensation and Reimbursement Policy, which sets out a fair and transparent framework for statutory and discretionary repayments and is aligned with the Housing Ombudsman's Complaint Handling Code. This policy ensures clarity for tenants, such as what we can consider for reimbursement and clear banding of the value of compensation that can be authorised by the manager of the service area. This will provide transparency to our tenants and improve consistency in officer decision-making. Regular complaints, check and challenge sessions are held within the housing team to learn and improve as a team, and discretionary compensation awards will form part of this regular review and will continue to monitor tenant satisfaction and complaint handling. Both policies have been informed by existing processes, tenant engagement and staff feedback, supporting the Council's commitment to continuous improvement and learning from tenants' experiences. We ask that Scrutiny endorse the implementation of these two policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Questions from members? Anything that anyone wishes to raise? Anne.
Just one question, definition of tenancy fraud. Does that include cuckooing, or would that come under a different, where someone isn't necessarily deliberately doing it, but it still happens?
Yes, it would count as tenancy fraud and come under the sort of checks and investigations that we would pursue under that route.
Okay. Any other questions at all on these policies? Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, it'd potentially be useful to know the sort of scale of the problem. Do we actually have much in the way of problems with tenancy fraud? And is there any indication of it getting worse? Potentially just some figures might have been helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, so tenancy fraud is it's something that we focus on prevention rather than needing to take enforcement on at the moment. There are already and have been for a very long time checks that are done at all different stages throughout the process. So some of the items mentioned in this policy are really about highlighting existing services and strengthening them for consistency. But it does start very much from the allocations process and the checks that the housing options team carry out, again, to be preventative, and people don't necessarily then, you know, come on to become a tenant, and that prevents it at that stage. And then when they are one of our tenants, then the tenancy management team, with their audit checks that they do with tenants, we do tenant profiling, regularly check on household members. Obviously things change since they have come to live in one of our homes, and so it's really about the prevention work that's being done. And you know, the prevention work is something that's done robustly, but in terms of enforcement, no, that's not something that we have a big problem of. I think you'd agree, Addy.
Okay, so for my Chair, is, to use a term, it's preventing the problem as opposed to actually trying to address an existing problem. Would that be?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And a reason for a lot of these policies that we are keeping you late at Scrutiny Commission for is because we've had a really good opportunity with the new consumer standards from the social housing regulator to reflect on what policies we do have, whether we can be clearer about what those policies are, and with our aims of being transparent for our tenants and making sure that tenants can hold us accountable and scrutinise services. One of our efforts around this is making sure that what we do and our approach is really clear. So we are introducing a suite of quite a lot of new policies, as you'll appreciate, and this is the driver behind introducing these policies, these ones that I'm bringing to you.
Any other questions? Paul?
My question follows on from that in a way, because it covers both these policies and the next one, in fact. It comes back to a theme I asked earlier about when tenants would be aware of these policies. And yeah, we are here late and going through these, but there's a lot of training to be done to implement all of these. So are they, what's the timescale for implementing all the policies, and how many of the policies will actually be issued to tenants to make them aware? Because there's some of these they need to know about because they're things they need to do, and some of the things were, the decants would be less requirements. So I'm just trying to get a feeling for the timescales that we're looking at for the policies, and when are they going to be sort of cycled through, and what's the impact going to be on the tenants?
Is that one for you, Lois, or is that a wider one for Maddie, which you prefer?
Oh, for me, if that's okay. It's a great question. So my role is to very much lead on tenant engagement, so I could sit here and talk to you about it all night, to be honest with you. But what we are really championing at the moment is we are creating these policies. We're co-creating them with tenants. So from the get-go, tenants who have we sort of recruit to be involved in services are there to help feed into these policies directly, and that's what we're doing for all of them. So it begins there. We then, subject to approval at executive, we'll be publishing all of our policies on our website. We do have people that will go on and search for them there, so we'll make sure that they're available. And we also have a newsletter that goes out to every tenant twice a year, and we tell tenants about anything new to the service. We talk a lot about you said and we did, because we want to directly translate what tenants are telling us into what we're producing, what the output is. We also feed back to those tenants that have actually been involved in co-creating the policies, so they can kind of be updated along the way as well. We're very much working in partnership with tenants to deliver these policies and to make sure they're realistic as well in implementing them and setting expectations for what tenants can expect from us. So yeah, in terms of awareness, we have events as well every single month now. It's part of our community conversations campaign. So 1 month we're out knocking doors. We visit about 100 properties on those events. Yeah, and then the following month we have a tenant drop-in where we invite people to come to us in a community centre local to them, and we're kind of touring the borough, so to speak, to make sure that we're getting around different locations and rural locations. So our awareness and sort of delivery of the messaging it's really important, as you've highlighted. It's something we're trying to get right, and we're listening to feedback on whether we are getting that right as well. So we're closing that feedback loop, as it were. And in terms of implementing the policies, there isn't any that I'm aware of that we wouldn't be implementing immediately. I mean, a lot of the actions in these policies we're already undertaking, as I mentioned earlier. So it's a lot about transparency to our tenants. And rather than just telling them what we do, we're putting policies together, a suite of policies that covers the service they can expect from us. And again, it gives them another opportunity to hold us to account for it as well.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question because that was a great answer.
Excellent. Any other questions at all from colleagues? No? Okay, a couple of observations from me. I love the complaints policy, again, really, really good. The way it links the compensation policy links to the complaints policy, that's what I meant to say. So some don't, and having those bridges across is really important so that people see the two as supporting but not intertwined. Also, it was just a comment about the tenants' newsletter, or the tenants' newsletter coming to members. I don't recall it ever having crossed my inbox. I may be the only one, I don't know, but we all have tenants in our patches, and it would be really interesting to be able to see what it is that's going out there, the messages that are out there, in case we get any feedback. So if you can just perhaps think about including members in that, that'd be really appreciated. Okay. If there's no more questions at all, we'll move to the recommendations, which are that members of the Scrutiny Commission note and endorse each policy. Proposer and a seconder, please. Richard to propose, seconded by Anne. All those in favour? That's everybody. Thank you very much. Well done. Right. We've saved the best till last, Gary. All right. There's no pressure. But over to you, please, for the housing repairs policy.
Thank you, Chair. The report presents the updated housing repairs policy, the associated and revised damp and mould policy, an accompanying asbestos management policy, and is seeking endorsement and approval for implementing each of those policies. These policies reflect new regulatory requirements, best practice standards and feedback from tenants. The housing repairs policy has been updated to reflect recent legislative changes, including AWAB's law, defines standards for responsive times, priorities and responsibilities. The damp and mould policy introduces a structured approach to tackling issues that can impact health and well-being. The policy prioritises timely intervention, compliance with AWAB's law and adherence to the Housing Health and Safety Rating System and Decent Home Standard. The asbestos management policy sets out the council's legal duties to identify, manage and control asbestos within its stock. It defines responsibilities, delegated authority and establishes testing regimes for council-owned properties. Tenant engagement, again, has been central to shaping these policies. They reflect the council's commitment to delivering safe, compliant and high-quality housing services. Subject to approval, all 3 policies will be formally adopted and communicated to tenants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Joyce.
Thank you very much. And thank you for 4.1, the table of times, target responses and completion times. That is something that we get on a regular basis when tenants ring up. I've reported this and it's not been done and so on. So this really does help us, you know, to actually respond to tenants and say, you know, if it's not an emergency, there's so many weeks. So thank you for that.
Michael, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. And just to say, firstly, my appreciation to the Scrutiny Committee for staying late this evening to go through all the various reports that we've had produced, and to thank the members of the committee for their questions and observations on those reports. In terms of the repairs team, I do regularly report things to Gary and the team, and I find them to be excellent in terms of responding and taking up issues that you raise with them. I know obviously there's an increased emphasis on the issues regarding damp and mould issues, given some tragic cases that happened nationally, and I know from the data that we've produced that the team locally have been very good at meeting damp and mould issues where they arise. I think we're very fortunate to have a very excellent housing team that serve the borough, and we've seen from the reports tonight a lot of work that's gone into producing these updated reports, and it's also been welcome that many of them have had input from tenants themselves, and I think it's very important that tenants do have their voices heard and they are able to impact what, after all, is in the end about ensuring that we deliver high quality properties that are maintained for tenants. And of course we still run our housing in Hinckley and Bosworth, which is not the case for all authorities, and I think that the team here do a good job at managing and running the properties for our tenants. Obviously there are other authorities in Leicestershire which don't still have any council housing themselves, run by themselves. That they've exported them out to other organisations in the past, and I think that is an issue which is going to obviously be an issue when we go forward to local government reorganisation. I hope perhaps the government will drop local government reorganisation, but unfortunately that seems unlikely. So if it does go ahead, and sadly Hinckley and Bosworth does no longer exist in a few years' time, the new authority will take on responsibility for housing, and obviously there will be different authorities that have different ways of managing their housing. It is an issue that I do raise at County Hall as well with senior officers there, because obviously whatever the new authority is, if it happens, will take on housing, and there's serious issues there to be dealt with. But in the meantime, all I will say is again to pay tribute to the housing team for the excellent work that they do, for the series of excellent reports they've produced tonight and policies they've put together, which has taken a lot of effort and work to put them together, and really just to give my appreciation to all the housing team for all the work they do supporting tenants across the borough.
Thank you for that, Michael. I had a couple of questions to ask, but you've concluded nicely, but we will still go through just ask a couple more questions. But Richard, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just a couple of questions. Damp and mould, again, is another regular that hits the inbox. Maddie, as you're only too well aware. And it seems to be almost one of those counterintuitive kind of things where people are desperately trying to keep the properties warm, which means they close the windows, but that means you're not getting the ventilation, so you get mould. Yeah, if you have a shower, you're doing your washing, you have your tumble dryer running, whatever it is, you get the damp, it can't go anywhere. I think if you put ventilation in, people then say, well, I've got a massive draft, all my heat's going out, etc. So it's not an easy problem to solve, I don't think. So I'm aware that as a council we've been doing a lot of work on that. Are we putting sort of more information out to tenants to sort of try and give them self-help, essentially, ways forward? And is that being picked up, do we know? And then the second question, in terms of asbestos, have we got any understanding of how many of our properties, if any, have still got asbestos out there? And is there a kind of a plan in place on sort of dealing with that in due course? Other than that, and thank you all very much for your help. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, in regards to the ventilation side of it, you're absolutely spot on. Yeah, and it's very much about educating people as well as trying to resolve the problems ourselves to an extent. But like you say, if people are not prepared to actually open a window at all or open any kind of vents, I mean, I've come across times where seeing cling film across air bricks and things like that sort of thing to seal it up. And again, you know, we can't legislate for that. But we've got to just try and educate people, and housing officers have been involved with that as well as the repair side to try and, you know, get that message across to people that, you know, it's important that they want to heat their house, keep it warm, but they've got to ventilate it as well. It's a balancing act, isn't it, between the two. With regards to asbestos, the majority of our stock was built prior to year 2000. Large numbers have asbestos within them. The majority of that is Artex, generally speaking, which is very, very low level asbestos, which, if untouched, is completely harmless. The policy talks about us basically resurveying properties, general properties, every 10 years to ensure that those kind of materials are not deteriorating. The asbestos report will state whether we can continue to manage that or whether we need to action it, as in remove. But unless we're actually instructed by specialists to remove, we will just continue to manage. There is significant volumes within properties.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, there is a four-page spread going out in the next issue of the Tenants newsletter, which will hopefully land on doorsteps within the next couple of weeks, and to members as well, to help. And that's been produced directly by the team within Gary's service that have been working with AWAB's Law and Damp and Mould day in, day out, really championing this great service that their team's promoting. So we're sharing that learning there in the newsletter.
Thank you both, Richard. Any other questions at all? Just a few from me to close then. Observation first, the damp and mould tracker that you use, market leading. I've not seen anything better, and I've seen a lot. So that's really good. Tenant engagement throughout all of the reports is so heartening to see, and Michael mentioned it in his remarks. We are co-producing these, aren't we? And that will really count for positive points when we come to be regulated, but it's also the right thing to do. The tenants have a right to have a voice as regards developing policies that affect how their home is run and managed, so it's extremely heartening to see that. Question for you, Gary. Some people are now looking at, some landlords are looking at just having two categories for repairs, basically emergencies and by appointment. So the challenges of trying to squeeze in everybody around sort of urgent and a bit less urgent and planned all get put into a pot of by appointment, and then people know when people are coming and it's done. Is that something we've considered or looked at?
We have no plans for that at this moment in time. When it comes to reporting the annual TSMs, that is how we do report it, but we have no proposals to change from what's in the current policy of immediate, emergency, urgent, routine and planned.
Fine, thank you very much. And just to close, I would like to compliment you on the choice of photo for the front page of this policy document. It may or may not be in my ward, but yeah, don't know whether that was deliberate or not. Okay, The recommendations then are that members note and endorse, it's getting late, endorse each policy. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for that? Joyce to propose, seconded by Richard. All those in favour? Thank you. Can I thank you all for your stamina and perseverance? Thanks to the officers, and thank you, Michael, for attending. Much appreciated. Good night.